Welcome, brave souls, to Into the Crawl Space, the channel where we dive deep into the hidden, the eerie, and the unknown. I'm Bates, your guide through the shadows, and together we'll explore chilling tales, spine-tingling mysteries, and the secrets lurking beneath our feet. So grab your flashlight, because you never know what you might find lurking in the dark. The air was cold and thick with fog as the couple trudged along the mountain trail, the steep incline pushing their muscles to the brink of exhaustion. The path had become treacherous, with jagged rocks that seemed to shift underfoot, and the trees, heavy with mist, loomed like silent sentinels. It was a part of the trail few dared to venture, far from the safety of the nearest town. Most hikers turned back long before reaching this isolated stretch, but a few curious souls pressed on. The sun was setting when Emma and her husband Derek found themselves lost. The GPS had failed hours ago, and the signs marking the trail had become fewer and farther apart. They had wandered off course, now entirely at the mercy of the wilderness. Derek, the more experienced hiker of the two, was growing increasingly agitated. "This isn't good, Em," he muttered, pulling at his backpack strap. "We should have seen a marker by now." Emma tried to reassure him. "We'll be fine. We just need to keep moving. Maybe we can find a marker up ahead." It was then that they saw the house. It stood at the edge of the forest, an old squat cottage that seemed out of place amidst the wilderness. Its windows were dark, no signs of life, but smoke curled from the chimney, a faint sign of warmth in the chilling air. "We should ask for help," Derek said, a hint of relief in his voice. "It's better than wandering around in the dark." Reluctantly, Emma nodded, and together they made their way to the front door. It opened before they could knock. An elderly man, his face wrinkled like crumpled parchment, smiled at them with an odd mixture of warmth and wariness. His hair was a patchwork of silver and white, his clothes tattered but clean. In his hand he held an old barrel organ, the kind that street performers used in the cities. The long wooden handle clicked rhythmically as he turned it, the sound echoing eerily in the quiet of the forest. "Lost, are you?" the man asked, his voice soft and gravelly. Derek nodded. "We've been hiking for hours, and we got off track. We were hoping you could point us back to the trail." The old man chuckled softly, his eyes twinkling. "Of course I can help, but it's a long way to the nearest town. You're better off staying here for the night. No point in wandering about in the dark." Emma hesitated, a flicker of unease prickling at the back of her neck. But Derek, ever the optimist, stepped forward. "That's very kind of you. We don't want to be a bother, but we really need to get out of this cold." The old man smiled again, this time with a touch of something darker lurking behind his eyes. "No bother at all. Please, come in. My wife would be delighted to meet guests. She's been lonely lately." Without another word, he stepped aside, ushering them in. The house was dimly lit, the air heavy with the scent of herbs and something else, something faintly metallic like old iron. The floorboards creaked under their weight as they entered the small, cluttered sitting room, where the old man motioned for them to sit. "Make yourselves comfortable," he said, his voice pleasant but strange, as though it didn't quite match the room. "I'll fetch something warm." As he disappeared into the back of the house, Emma exchanged an uncertain glance with Derek. There was something off about the place, but she couldn't put her finger on it. She'd heard of people getting lost in remote areas and falling victim to strange, dangerous individuals. But this man didn't seem threatening, at least not in the way she imagined. They settled into the dusty chairs, the organ's soft, repetitive grinding still echoing from the other room. "Maybe we should just wait for him to bring us directions," Derek said, though his voice had a tightness to it, as if he were trying to ignore the feeling of discomfort settling over him. "We'll get out of here soon enough." But Emma wasn't so sure. The shadows seemed to grow longer in the corners of the room, and every creak of the house felt louder, more pronounced. Something about the stillness of the place made her uneasy, as if the walls were listening. A sudden sound from behind made her jump. The old man returned with a steaming pot of tea, his hands shaking slightly. He set it down on the table in front of them. "Just a little something to warm you up. My wife insists on treating every guest as if they were family." He sat across from them, his fingers gently caressing the handle of the barrel organ. The tune it played was soft but strange, like a lullaby stretched too thin, the notes distorted as though something was off with the instrument itself. "Where's your wife?" Derek asked, his curiosity getting the better of him. The old man's smile faded just slightly, a shadow passing across his features. "She's not well. She's been ill for some time. But don't worry, she'll join us soon enough. Emma noticed the tremor in the old man's voice. She wasn't sure if it was the man's age or something deeper, something more unsettling. As they sipped the tea, Emma's mind kept returning to the sound of the organ. The more she listened, the more it felt like the song was. She glanced toward the back of the house, where the sound seemed to come from, and noticed a strange door, half hidden behind a curtain. "I think we should go," Emma said suddenly, standing up. She had to get out of here. Something felt wrong, terribly wrong. Derek stood too, but before he could say anything, the old man's voice stopped them. "Wait," he said, and his tone was uncharacteristically firm. "There's no need to leave just yet. My wife, she's expecting you." Before either of them could react, they heard it. The soft, unsettling sound of metal scraping against stone. A low, clinking rattle that echoed from the back of the house. The sound grew louder, closer, until the door to the hallway creaked open. From the shadows she emerged. The woman was tall and gaunt, her skin pale as ash. Her eyes were sunken deep into her skull, and her long, disheveled hair hung in tangled clumps around her face. She shuffled forward, her movements stiff and jerky, as though her joints were made of brittle bone. The shackles around her wrists rattled as she moved, a terrible sound as she moved ever closer. Derek froze, his hand still gripping the back of his chair. The old man smiled, but this time there was no warmth in it. "There she is," he said softly as he cranked the old barrel organ's handle slowly. "My dear wife, she's very particular about who she meets." Emma's heart pounded as the woman took another step forward. She could feel the air growing thicker, heavy with the weight of something unnatural. The woman's eyes locked onto Emma, and there was a look in them that made her stomach twist with dread. A look of pure hunger. "Derek," Emma whispered, taking a small step back. But it was too late. Derek, clearly caught in the strange, unnerving atmosphere, had taken a sip of the tea just before the woman emerged. His eyelids fluttered. His breath slowed. "Hey," Emma said urgently, reaching for him. "Derek, wake up." But the man was already slumping into the chair, his body going slack, his eyes glazed over in a stupor. "Don't worry, dear," the old man said in a tone that had turned almost soothing. "It'll be over soon." Emma's legs began to feel like lead. The tea was working its insidious magic. She could feel the heaviness in her limbs, the way her thoughts were clouding, her senses dulling. The organ grinder turned the handle again, the screeching tune filling the room, and with every note, Emma felt herself drifting, her head growing heavy, her vision blurred. The last thing she saw was the woman's eyes wide, hungry, gleaming with a terrible, unspoken need. And then, in a daze, she reached for Derek, trying to shake him awake, trying to get him to move, to run. But the woman reached her first. With a low, guttural sound, the woman lunged, shackles scraping, and Emma's world went black. When Emma woke, she was no longer sitting in the chair. She was lying on the cold stone floor of a dark, damp cellar. The air smelled sour like rot and decay. Her arms and legs felt heavy, shackled to the floor. In the distance, she could hear the faint sound of the organ grinding. And that wraps up our exploration for today. What did you think of the hidden horrors we uncovered? Let me know in the comments below. Remember, the crawl space holds many secrets, and we've only just scratched the surface. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more spine-chilling stories and explorations. Until next time, keep your lights on and your curiosity alive. Who knows what might be waiting just around the corner or beneath the floorboards?